Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be some feedback, some things that I would like to see changed about Avatar Generations. In general, I think a lot of quality of life stuff has happened to make the game vastly better than it was at launch, but I still think there are some big things that do need to be changed to get it to the kind of ideal position. So let's jump straight in with this. So I'll head in here to the shop here, head over here to resources, skill level token. Now specifically what I'm trying to say here is that I think we need an equivalent item to this for relics and support animals, because ultimately for the high level stuff you need to have max level relics, max level supports, and max level characters. And currently in the game, while yes, this is a particularly rare item, it is something that you can do to avoid having to get just incredibly lucky in the summon banners. So it means that characters are actually much more easy to get to absolute max level, 6 out of 6 skill level, because these tokens exist in the game and you can get them in a couple of different ways. What it means is that it is actually much more difficult to get max level relics and max level supports in the game. So you can see here, I have the Talariktug 1 max level, but that's because Talariktug comes from a powerful opponent banner where when you pull Talariktug, you get this one by default. That is not the case for most other relics. And so you can see I have relatively few 5-star relics, and the ones that I do are all very, very low level. You can see this is just 1 on its own. I got this one is boosted by 1, so it's kind of level 2 out of 6. And it's pretty similar as we go down the board here. There's not much I have that is particularly high level. Getting down to kind of this stuff here, you can see, again, a lot of the easier to get stuff, the 4-star relics is higher. But you can see here, tributes to the Avatar, level 2 out of 6. Inheritance, 2 out of 6. 1 Spirit Oasis. Ooh, this one's 3 out of 6. The chance of me getting this to 4, 5, and eventually 6 out of 10, to me it just feels like it is hopeless. That I just have so little opportunity to pull a duplicate of this exact thing to try and upgrade it so that the chance of this is higher, that its max level is higher. That is incredibly frustrating to me. And so I really do feel that it is an absolute requirement and need in this game that we have some sort of a relic skill token, a support skill token, just because of how difficult 5-star relics are to actually get in the game. And it's probably even worse for the supports, because you don't see supports as regularly either. Like, look, I have next to no 5-star support animals. I have a badger mole. Obviously, I got quite lucky during the Boomy banner and maxed out Boomy. Have a couple of gorilla goats here, Flopsy. Somehow I have this at 4 out of 6, but I only have 3 5-star animal characters. They are needlessly rare for no particular reason, and there is a huge gulf, at least in terms of someone who, like me, I regularly play the game, but I go into the arena and I just see these people with maxed out 5-star relics, and I just feel like I'm going in at an immediate disadvantage because I just did not really have the capacity to get that stuff. And so again, this is not the immediate solution to that, because you could still make these items rare, like the character skill coins, but it would be a more deterministic way to level up these supports and relics to get to that level. So absolutely required. The next point is going to be on a similar topic, and it is also about basically the relics and stuff like that. But it's more about like how you actually acquire them. So let's actually go into the new banner that's currently going on right now, the Blue Spirit one. He's not a character I'm particularly interested in, so I haven't been summoning on it at all. I'm saving up for better things. But if we look at what's actually available here, this is kind of commonly the thing that we have here with these, where when you want to summon on this banner, you're summoning on it because you want the Blue Spirit and you want the Blue Spirit's relic, the mask. Everything else in here is just sort of like, cool, I would love it if I pulled some of these 5-star animals, but I'm not going to. It's just as simple as that. I would love it if I could pull some other kind of actually good stuff in this, like 5-star relics and so on. But the chances are so low, I'm not going to do it. Do you know what I am going to get, though, is like 1 million of this, 1 million of that, 1 million of that. And it just piles up in my relics category, and it means I'm overloaded with this stuff that I just have absolutely no use for. All the while, I'm seeing like next to no animals, and I'm certainly seeing next to no 5-star other items. So I think something that needs to happen in this game is to make banners across the board more usable, is to just better fill the loot table of each banner with like unique items. I think improvements have been made, because I think this is like basically the same as it was in early access, whereas more recent banners, like say this, have had adjustments made where, of course, you have your 5-star characters, you have your 5-star relics, but they've added in new exclusive 4-star relics, which you will see a little bit more regularly. And that is very nice. That makes them feel a lot more rewarding. But when you don't pull any of this stuff, it just feels terrible. And you're never going to see most of the other kind of interesting kind of high level stuff. So to me, what I would want to see is just each banner have a little bit more of a particularly constructed loot pool, where maybe you only have 1 or 2 5-star animals, but their percentage chance is just a little bit higher. I don't want them to just be given away to everyone so you can easily max out, you know, as much as possible, but higher than 0.1%. You know, just better than what we currently have, to make it just a little bit more feasible that we actually more regularly see some of this stuff. And just that, like, when you're actually pulling the random stuff and you're not getting the featured stuff, that you actually have a sense of like it is a little bit random, that you can actually pull some good stuff from the other stuff when you're not getting the featured. That's the major problem here, because it also links into another issue that probably does need to be dealt with, and it's pretty obvious. It's just that, like I said, you just get so many of these 3-star items, so many of them, and they're just useless effectively. They just fill up your relics category for no particular reason, and it's doing this while you're screaming out for a couple of decent support animals. And so some really obvious things that I think could be done to improve some of these banners is to maybe have a banner come around where it's, say, like a new Aang banner, but there are no relics. Like, he has his signature relic for, you know, the character, the new Aang relic or whatever, but apart from that, everything else you're going to pull is probably going to be like a support animal, and you just have this be a sort of like a specific sort of animal bonus banner with the special Aang or whatever, and this is your way to, you know, obviously try and get this new character, but it's also your way to get more animal support characters, and that's really, really good. Maybe you have one where there's no support animals in it and it's a little bit more relics focused, but it's a specific set of relics. And it's just anything to make it feel like summoning on one of the different banners is a little bit better when you don't get the good stuff. Similarly, I think we probably need to have a bit of a discussion about this banner. I don't remember the last time I made a single summon on this banner. I know they made improvements to it so that like the number doesn't reset after you pull something, so you're always going to get to pity once you start getting the number down. But it is such a large pool of characters, it's such a large pool of just items in general. Your chance of finding a specific one is just nowhere, and so I probably have to assume that very few people are using this banner much at all. So I think something needs to be done to make it more worthwhile to use the general banner. Now, straight away, I would say this needs to be probably slashed a little bit. Like, you need to lower the pity on this quite a bit to make people care. Like, why, like, when you have banners that come out and they're like 120 pity, why is the generic banner 200? So straight away, one thing I'd be like, lower this to 120. I don't think you'll get people going crazy for it even at 120, but it's something you could do to make it a little bit better. And then another thing you should be doing, I think, here is just like, if you had just kind of like weekly bonus, like chance boosts on things, like say like this particular week, you have a higher chance of getting 5-star animals. Like it goes up by like a reasonable amount so that you actually have a decent chance to get it. Stuff like that I think would be kind of interesting, that it's just, you know, it adjusts itself like a little bit each week to be a little bit more kind of reasonable. That maybe, you know, each week the featured stuff changes a little bit, that like they actually have featured pull rates or something like that. This is the sort of stuff that I think you need to make this banner more than just a, oh yeah, and you now have a way to get these characters whose banner isn't going to come around for like a year. So they're just some, I think, some really clear-cut, like obvious changes that need to be made there. Also, I think upgrading supports and relics costs way too much. So let's go in here and just show this for an example. So this is the support I currently have in my Talaric Tug. And you can see here it's only level 34, even though it's like 6 out of 6 skill. Now, if we go to upgrade this, it's like, okay, let's go here. Let's use some of this. 270,000 to increase it by 2 levels. Yikes. Okay, let's try some higher level stuff here. Let's use the highest level thing. 750,000 bumps us up by a couple of levels. Let's throw in some of this. Throw in some of these ones and this. And it's like we're spending $1 million and we're only leveling it up by about 6? That's so expensive. And it's only a 4-star character support as well. And it's very similar for like some of this other stuff as well, where like, let's just look at this 4-star Mask of Ursa. If we try to level this up, we'll put this in, try and max it out a little bit with this. And it's like, okay, we get to level 60 from level 11, but it costs us 4 million and a lot of the higher level materials for this as well. And it just feels really excessive when the stats that you get from having high level relics is so pretty high. It's something that is needed to be competitive, and it just feels like they're priced like way too high. And I don't understand at all. Now I get it, you can earn gold relatively quickly, like just by doing some of the different pirate domain stages. You can realistically, with like a full stamina thing, earn like 2 million gold relatively quickly. But still, the fact that like you basically have to spend like 2 or 3 days worth of like max focused on gold just to level up like one thing, it's a lot when it also costs a lot of gold to level up a character to level 70, and you're using other materials as well. I'm not saying it needs to be dropped by like 50% or something like that, but I do think it just needs to be looked at a bit, because it probably is holding a lot of people back from going higher level with a lot of their stuff, because there's so much other stuff to like use your stamina on, to grind for, all this sort of stuff. So I just think that is a change that is needed. A more minor change, just because it's a little bit silly, the daily items that's for free, some of it being so low amounts is just really, really silly and laughable. Like the training scroll here, being 10 training scrolls. I get it's just the daily gift thing in the shop for free. But 10 is such a pathetically low amount. Why would I bother? Like, how am I even going to notice that in any degree? Because at the high levels, I'm needing thousands of training scrolls. And that just by doing any of the training scroll, the training grounds events, I'm getting way more than that little free kind of boost. It's just, it is such a small amount. It is barely an addition, like, at all to anything. And I think across the board, a lot of that stuff isn't great. It's like, what, 5,000 gold, which is basically nothing when you need millions to upgrade stuff at the higher levels. I just think that stuff, it doesn't need to be a huge amount that you're given for free, but it needs to be better than the tiny amount that it currently is. The next thing going into adventures is to, I think restrictions on certain battles do, and resource nodes do probably need to be looked at a little bit. So say this one, for example, Hegemon's Folly. Earth Kingdom only. And again, this is the post-story, just adventure battle type thing. So the story's over. Why does it have this restriction in place at all? And on a relatively high level kind of activity, considering it has a pretty extreme restriction, Earth Kingdom. And that would be fine if Earth Kingdom really was as general as it suggested. But when this doesn't include Boomy, despite him being a king in the Earth Kingdom, it does get kind of confusing like this. When the reason it's here is for, like, flavor with the area and with the story of the area. But like I said, this is the post-story stuff. Why is this still in here as a restriction requirement here? That forces me to use, like, Kyoshi warrior characters, soldier characters, and stuff like that. When the story doesn't in any way really hint at who these characters who are basically supporting Jang during the story actually are. The fact that you're allowed to use the Boulder, who blatantly wouldn't be in this situation, that's fine, but I can't use, like, all these other characters. It's so confusing as to why the restriction is even there in the first place. I get stuff like, for say, the boss battles, because it's more of like an endgame pursuit, while you have restrictions on some of them to max out your team. But this is like an adventure battle, and it's 300,000 with a quite extreme restriction. I know myself, the video's up on my channel. It completely ground my playthrough of the story to a halt, that I had to stop and plan my resources accordingly to level up some of my Earth Kingdom characters, because I was stunned that I'm not allowed to use Boomy, who I do have maxed out, and I just happened to have a lineup of Earth Kingdom characters who were not particularly high level. And it was quite a while of just planning out what I had to finally be able to get through this. And it wasn't like a satisfying thing in the end when I finally did it. It was just, now I've wasted a bunch of resources just to do this, to try and continue on with the story. I'm okay with restrictions in certain places, but I just feel a little bit more thought needs to go into when they are put into place, and if they even need to have restrictions after a certain point. So there is that. Then a note on the arena. Now, I'll highlight first, I think, why I think this is an important thing. Stuff like, where is it here? This. When you have event challenges like this, win arena battles with officer heroes, and when a lot of the characters are going to have stuff in the kind of like, where is this going to be? Like, yeah, when it has stuff like, when all the characters in their final skill mastery thing are going to say, like, win arena battles 25 times. There is a requirement to get your characters to max level that you use them in the arena before they're fully, like, maxed out. The arena, I think, is very competitive. It's probably like too competitive. Like, just look at this. I am 1879, fighter 2, still in like the bronze colors and stuff like that. And every opponent they're directing me towards is people who have over like 5,000, over 4,000 score. Everything is a really high level, 580,000, nearly 600,000 for this person here, who's probably one of the highest ranked people on the list. and I'm being put up against them, and I'm trying to do that challenge where I'm using officer characters, but my officer characters aren't max level. I don't have max skill coins for them, and it feels like I have to scavenge through the arena to find a battle suitable to adjust my team to put an officer character in there. And even then, I have probably a high chance to lose because my team is not fully orchestrated around operating with officer characters and dealing with having like a slightly weaker character in the team. I think there needs to be a section of the arena that doesn't require tickets, that when you lose fights, your score doesn't go down. When you win, it doesn't go up. But it works for doing challenges and it works for doing masteries. And just so that you are not having to put your I am playing competitive Avatar generations using your max team, and it's the only team you can really use. And especially when the balance at the high level can be a bit sketch, and you can just get blown out by some very OP strategies. It just makes it so that I kind of am like, well, guess I'm not doing that arena challenge because I'll only probably encounter maybe 4 or 5 people who I'll be able to actually defeat to accomplish that, unless, once again, I devote all of my resources for the next week or two into leveling up that character, who I only really am doing this to kind of actually get them to their max level when I eventually would want to use them, but you're asking me to use them before they're ready. And it just is this whole cycle of like, why are you doing this to me, game? So I think that needs to be adjusted in some way. Next thing I have here is arts management. So as you can see here, just look at this. 525 out of 360. Why am I even allowed to go overboard? And it's obviously because I think they realize that this is a major problem. It starts to actually limit you and tell you to discard stuff, I think, when you get to about 530. But like, I'm not going to pay, like, what's this? 200,000 basically for 5 more slots to adjust this even more. It just feels like no thought went into how the management of this was going to go, when your art selection, the specific stats are so important at the high end. I feel almost like afraid to discard a lot of my purple ones, and as you can see here, I barely have like any orange ones. I only have probably like 3 or 4 over the course of playing the entire game. It's a real challenge because when you earn new ones, you don't get to look at what their stats are until you go into the overall inventory and actually look at them there. Whereas I do think they probably need to show you the specific stats on the arts that you get when you earn them, and almost allow you to then and there choose if you want to keep them or discard them. And that is a way to definitely assist with managing your art. Because otherwise, you're like, okay, I got a new green scroll. It's now just randomly here among the other 12 green scrolls I have. Let me look through which one it is. It's just like, okay, I know I have all these HP accuracy ones. Oh yeah, there it is. HP attack, HP resist. And it's just so awkward, and it needs to change, because I think a lot of people are probably in the same situation as me, where you're almost like hoarding them because you don't have the time to go through each of these one by one and be like, okay, HP attack, don't need this. This is actually a really bad one. I'll get rid of this. But I've just spent like a minute trying to find one to delete when I have 500. That is definitely a problem that needs to be adjusted in my mind. Another thing I have down here is just that I do think in general the adventure paths and stuff like that do need to be adjusted a little bit when it comes to sort of like earlier areas. I think the rewards need to be bumped up a little bit, where like across the board it feels like there's a certain point at which, yeah, you just need to give more like blue and purple materials in some of those earlier areas, and not put as much strain on the later areas of the game to be where you get them all from, just to make the game a little bit more generous, make it worth running the paths a little bit more than it kind of currently actually is, that sort of thing. Similarly, same complaint that like I think a lot of people have. Definitely something needs to be done to make traveling the adventure paths every single day at the reset less of a soul destroying experience where it's just this really time consuming thing of just like, okay, gotta move my guy like over here, okay, fast travel here, and then the easiest way to travel all this distance is to have him travel to this one right here. I'll wait half an hour and then I'll do this path up here, then I'll wait a minute and then do this path here, and you just keep doing that over and over again, when it's like, why can't I just be like, when the reset rolls over, this guy is here, he's not doing anything, why doesn't it just like auto go? Like, why not? Like, in a way, if I want to, I'll come in here and be like, hey, why is he walking? I can cancel whatever they're doing. Because the thing here is you have to still allow people the customization stuff about who walks and stuff like that, because it's part of like skill masteries and challenges, like adventuring with specific characters. But definitely whatever quality of life thing for adventuring they're planning, because I think they said they're working on something, it needs to come, and I think it needs to come sooner rather than later. A more minor point about timelines while I'm here is this. So of course, I thought the Kyoshi update was incredible. It was a huge update to the game that really made me like 10 times as invested in the game as I was before. The one frustration I had, and it's mainly with the first week of the update, was that we were only given one character to do the Kyoshi stuff with. And again, because of the restrictions that are in place on certain things, it meant you had 2 areas, but you only had the initial Kyoshi. Unless you got lucky and pulled Rangi very early on, because Rangi was the only other character in that first week. Because sure, you could pull Avatar Kyoshi, but it's still another Kyoshi and you can't use kind of 2 of them at once. So I thought it was a little bit of a mistake to launch the game basically with only 2 unique characters available, and one of them tied to summons only. So for future timelines, when you're launching a new era, I think you need to give people at least 2 characters like immediately, so you're able to travel to different areas in the adventure paths at once and just kind of get going with like a bit of team building, and not just be left like, oh, I only have 1 character to do anything with, especially if you don't get lucky with pulls and stuff like that. So going forward for like Korra, okay, yeah, I understand you're going to give us a Korra, but you probably need to give us like a Tenzin as well, maybe a Mako or a Bolin, and stuff like that, and then have other characters available to summon. It just, I think, is something that like needs to happen, because like they got it right in a way, like with the original game, where like you were given an Aang, a Katara, a Sokka, and a Zuko. And I think they just need to think about that as they go forward. I think they knew that they made a little bit of a mistake, because like they noted that like trying to progress early on in the game was a little challenging unless you had Rangi. So I think that will be course corrected already, but it's just something that should be noted, that that first week was a bit frustrating for the event with very few characters available. Next, I have here character bios or descriptions. Basically, this is about the story of the game is badly needed. So I'm going to go here to the character menu here, and let's just pick Aang for a second and be like, okay, look, what do these buttons do? You'll note here that this one doesn't do anything, feature unavailable. This one the same, this one the same. Well, this one here is for costumes, obviously. We know that's a feature that's going to be added. It's mentioned in the game already. This scroll, I have to assume, is meant to be a character bio that explains who the character is, what their story is, that sort of stuff. This is what I think is badly needed in the game, because of characters like this guy, Talarik Tug. Even now that we have the Kyoshi update with like Kelsong and Jeonju and stuff like that, you also have new characters like Kiwok herself, and so on. Even maybe more like the generic characters, it could be interesting to get information on the Fifth Nation. This is an important thing, I think, to keep the story in a way alive in the game. Because you can only play the story content once, it means you either have to re-watch videos of people playing through the story to get the information on, say, him. But if the bio feature was in the game, you could just read about Talaric Tug right here. And I think that's what's needed, because I don't think the story content was so good that it fully characterized who this person is. So a bio in combination with how he was utilized in the story would really help to get across better who the character is, because there's always going to be situations where you're having the character involved in what's going on, where there'll be specific details that doesn't really make a lot of sense, it doesn't flow with the story to explain some core information about him. Well, in the bio, you can have some of that core information on who this person is. And I think especially for the game original characters, like him, like Kiwak, like the Dojo Master, it is, I think, very important that their story be very clearly accessible through having the character bio. Here, I, even on the Discord, have given them feedback in the past that the Avatar Generations website, which has little bios for like the really obvious main characters, should probably also have bios for the new characters as well. Because I think a lot of people do tend to like not focus on or skip over the new characters all that much, unless their abilities are really, really incredible, but they don't actually care about the character. Whereas they are putting time and effort in. If you've seen, especially like the last developer video they did, they care about the new story content that they're allowed to do. And I want to care about it as well, but you need to give me some of this more concrete information through character bios to make me care about that. That even me, who's probably one of the more in-depth lore channels out there, I still feel like I can barely do a video on who is Talaric Tug, because it's a little wishy-washy on who he is over the course of the story, and without a character bio, there's not a lot I can say. So I think this should be prioritized here a little bit. If you want us to care, put the information in the game, and it feels like, you know, it's right here. It's just a lot of text. Again, it probably has to go through approvals, but it should, to me, be able to be done. Because there's only a handful of new original characters, and then the rest of it will just be writing recaps for the characters that we know very, very well, of course. So that is absolutely needed. And I think one of the final things I want to mention here is, I don't think any of them are currently active at the moment, but for event challenges that require like inflict a specific debuff on an opponent X many times, or use a critical up buff multiple times, the game should tell you which characters has that. And I don't know what they need to do, whether they can add like a little eye icon on some of these things that just like pulls out a little menu and explains that, like, hey, this character has it, this character has it, this character has it. It feels overly specific for an event challenge, that it is asking you to look that far into how many characters, like abilities and stats that they have, to find those details. And I assume most people are probably like that, where they always go to the Discord and find the list that is there of like, this character can do this character can do that. But even then, there's usually a little bit of complexity to it, because there's sometimes some weird wording in descriptions and stuff like that. And then for some characters, they can only do this thing on a pretty high level mastery, so it's much later on in the progress of that character. So I just think stuff like that needs to be adjusted a little bit as well. Also, as just a bit of a point, a bit of a frustration, it's been a bit too often that a new group of event challenges has come out, and that there's been one that just doesn't track at all. So I'm not sure why that keeps happening, in terms of like, you know, is it not being tested or what? But if at all possible, like, it would be nice to get some of these event challenges kind of hitting where they just all work immediately. But I think that's for now pretty much everything I want to say in terms of feedback. There's obviously other little bits and pieces. I will say straight away that I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough about every single character, knowledgeable enough about the meta to particularly say what balancing changes need to be made for the arena. The only particular thing that comes to mind currently would be that I think Avatar Kyoshi probably needs to be adjusted a little bit, because every time I get frustrated when I lose a battle, it is inevitably because an Avatar Kyoshi just starts doing stuff and I'm kind of like, what is happening here? Why is Kyoshi like attacking like 3 or 4 times in a row? Why is his attack so powerful? Why can't I actually make a move? What is happening here? And it just feels like that's doing a little bit too much. And currently, in terms of trying to find the battles to make my progress, of course, I do find that oftentimes I'm avoiding a lot of people who have a high power level and they happen to have an Avatar Kyoshi on their team. So my initial impressions are probably that, yeah, Kyoshi is the main thing that maybe needs to be adjusted a bit. Maybe I've seen some concern about some of the recent focus on things that grant invincibility and people leaning into that and it creating a little bit of a kind of unfair situation. But we'll see how that actually progresses. You know, I think we're at a kind of a weird point in the game where you can sort of clearly see the different generations of characters, where like the Kyoshi characters feel like a decent bit above a lot of the kind of early access characters which we've mainly been dealing with up to now. So I guess we're going to see maybe the first batch of more maybe like modern ATLA characters and see if they will kind of like change things, how they stack up against the Kyoshi characters, and you know, that sort of stuff. That could be interesting. It probably does mean that actually like quite a few of the characters maybe need some buffs, might even need some like abilities fully like reworked to just make them maybe like do a little bit more, because there's characters where like I like, but I often feel like, wow, your moveset is awfully specific when the likes of Kyoshi just seems to do a bit of everything, and that sort of thing. But that's just my quick take on like what's actually going on right now in the high level stuff. I don't claim to be an expert at all. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the different points that I made here in terms of suggestions for changes and things that should be adjusted. And also let me know any additional ones that you yourself have. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching and bye.